Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are currently observing spirited efforts of the United States and its NATO allies to maintain the unity of Western countries and the strategic stability in the face of the growing threat of aggression from Russia, which sent more than 100,000 soldiers to the border with Ukraine. Speaking today from Kraków in Poland, I must say that particularly here in my geographical location, where we have our particular historical experience, we can see on the political horizon possible physical war threats to the region's integrity and sovereignty, but also threats to our security from exploitation of technology for offensive purposes. Last week's cyber attack on the Ukrainian government services and the infection of the Ukrainian systems with damaging malware can possibly be the first salvo of the Russian military aggression, which we now hear in the cyberspace. It was no different with the cyber attacks on Georgian websites and eventually on the strategic Baku-Tbilisi-Chesan pipeline in 2008. Then Russia invaded Georgia a few days later, and the conflict became a showcase of the potential that cyber attacks can have in future warfare. The New York Times reported that it was the first time in history that a known cyber attack had coincided with a shooting war. While warfare has reached a new digital frontier, peace has moved to the gray zone at the same time. The sphere where no rules exist for some countries and which they have taken an advantage of. This sphere has been increasingly often used with time, and the Russian government has drawn benefits from the operation of its hackers against Estonia in 2007, Lithuania in 2008, Georgia in 2008, Kyrgyzstan in 2009, and from many more instances, always keeping the deniability narrative. Cyber tools have turned out to be a standard for Russian, and not just Russian, political interactions and discourse, since they have been proven effective both in peacetime and as a part of military operations. Over the years, Russia has been using Ukrainian critical infrastructure and ICT systems as a testbed to perform new forms of cyber attacks, causing energy grid disruption in 2015 and 2016, and causing the as yet most destructive and costly cyber attack in history with NotPetya in 2017. The world could not stop this spiral of cyber aggression. This needs to change now. We need to move towards a digital world based on values and principles, and to be able to hold to the agreed rules. So far, diplomacy, defense, and deterrence have not been sufficiently effective. In the last 14 editions, Cybersec agendas had positive and constructive tone. We called for cooperation, capacity building, and trust. Now this 15th edition is no different. We call for values to implement into cyberspace. By values, one can understand the right to be independent and free to choose one's own path of development, consistent with one's sense of belonging. The core value is the self-determination, sovereignty. Ukraine, Georgia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and all other Central and Eastern European countries have chosen to be democratic and free of externally imposed suppression. The right to self-determination is to be respected in political, social, economic, and digital domains, whether on the seas, in the air, on the land, in the space, or in the cyberspace. There is a difference, however, between this Cybersec and its call and the earlier ones we have made, and it is in the urgency. We, the political West, need to adjust to the growing threats in cyberspace immediately. Whispergate is now threatening Ukraine and may be followed by a military aggression. And the destructive power of Whispergate can soon be felt globally because cyberspace has become the mirror of the geopolitical tensions. Recently, the CSIRT of the Polish Ministry of Defense on this side of the Atlantic and the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency on its other side issued the same warnings regarding the cyber threats to critical infrastructure. The real threat of the adversarial use of cyber weapons against the transatlantic community and our principles and values is here, and is now felt not only by the CE countries but also elsewhere around the globe. The adversarial use of the cyberspace has been suffocating the truth in the public information sphere, threatening the critical infrastructure assets, undermining democratic institutions such as elections, exploiting sensitive state information and intelligence, as well as undermining the integrity of societies as such. This ultimately can terminate our personal freedom. Cyber attacks are now testing the transatlantic security and our willingness to respond. Constituting an aggression below the threshold of an armed conflict, they cause disagreement among NATO members on how to respond. To make sure that our values are respected, we need to keep strengthening our cyber defense, offense, and detection capabilities. Cyber invaders still count that a cyber attack, even of a massive scale, will spark no concrete sanctions, because there is no consensus about what constitutes an act of war, where the threshold of triggering the West's response to cyber attack is. Therefore, first and foremost, we need to stay united and play fair and by the same playbook to be able to impose high-impact sanctions and offer strong response to cyber attacks. We also urgently need to rethink how to deter cyber attacks and what tools to use. We should subsequently perform what is known as deterrence messaging towards adversarial regimes to let them know what responses can be expected. But we also need to cooperate on building our capabilities, such as those within Diana and the Innovation Fund introduced by NATO, which can be used to build innovative cyber solutions to adapt for future cyber threats, for instance fueled by artificial intelligence. We need to create avenues of cooperation like the Transatlantic Trade and Technology Council. We need to build real private-public partnerships to harness advantages from the expertise of ICT players. Let's remember that it was Microsoft who first discovered the recent cyber operation against Ukrainian services. At the same time, we need to establish secure digital supply and value chains, including those for semiconductors, 5G, AI, and many more emerging and disruptive technologies. We need to protect effectively our technologies and innovations. We need to strengthen our cyber resilience by incorporating cybersecurity into digital transformation, also while designing and implementing digital strategies, economic policies, and recovery plans. We need to share information on cyber threats, as well as indications and warnings, including with our partners such as Ukraine. We need to strengthen our offensive capabilities and set up right procedures on when and how to use them to protect the digital frontiers of our freedom and democracy, and to be able to call peace, peace again. Ladies and gentlemen, we must face the truth. The security architecture is changing, and our adversaries will also use cyberspace to support their malicious purposes. Since the nature of cyber attacks can lead to the situation when it may spiral out of control, the scale of such cyber conflict is hard to predict. But to counter it and to win our shared future, we need to learn lessons from our shared history. We need to stay united. Even more so in the face of a highly likely Russian military aggression on Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, the 15th edition of Cybersec is now officially open. Please share your reflections on the current situation and the future challenges with us during Cybersec Global 2022. Thank you.